Hello everyone and welcome back on a very special edition of Candid Camper. I'm here in front of the National Museum of Industrial History. We're gonna check this place out and give you a little bit of history.
The generator. So it's off right now, so it can't move. This is the brake. This is forward or reverse. And this is the throttle. Very simple.
Lucky enough to get a tour from the historian here, Mike Piersa, as well as an interview with a former steelworking foreman, Don Young. So check these guys out. They have some amazing information.
Artifacts going back, like this one goes to the 1840s. That was actually displayed at the Centennial Exposition in Philadelphia, next to the giant Corliss engine that's long gone, but it had a 30-foot flywheel on it. And that engine was so powerful that it took them 7 years after the exposition ended to sell it, because nobody needed all of that concentrated power in one space in the way that that engine delivered it. Two of the most significant pieces in the museum. The Blue Machine is on loan from the Smithsonian, and it's the oldest surviving American-built four-cycle engine. So anybody who drove to the museum on a car that burns gasoline, this is really the granddaddy of all of those engines. And you want to guess how many horsepower it is?
800.
Show me some fingers on one hand.
3?
4 horsepower.
Maybe give a little bit of background about, you know, are you from the Bethlehem area here?
Actually, no, I'm from Baltimore originally,
okay.
But I came up here in 1962 in order to work in this plant.
And what did you do here?
I was a foreman in the electric furnace melting department, which was the steel making shop for the specialty steels.
Do you feel like things have changed since the steel plant was shut down?
In some respects, the place is cleaner, okay? Because one of the famous sayings around the place was, you see that smoke, you see that slag, well, that's prosperity.
And
right.
How many people worked here back then?
Okay, back then, the place opened in 1860, made its first product in 1863. I'm sure the workforce was in the hundreds, perhaps, at that time. The first time I have any real numbers were in World War I, when they expanded halfway to eastern Pennsylvania along the river. 35,000 people. Now, a lot of these were people who were not in the steel making plant, but were in shell shops and making wood for gun carriages and crates and all sorts of support facilities for the steel company. When World War II came about, you got to realize now, first in the middle there's the Depression, and employment went way down in the 1930s Depression. But the Depression ended in this place in 1937, because that's when we were filled up with orders for war material, not only for the United States, but for Japan and Germany, because we weren't at war with them. We could sell to them because they were regular customers. Only after 1939, with the Hitler invasion of Poland, were we prohibited from selling to those people. As we say, the skyline of Manhattan sprung up from steel from this plant.
Wow. How much competition was there between Bethlehem and Pittsburgh?
A lot, and not that much, okay, because as I say, when we were making rail, steel rail, Pittsburgh soon eclipsed us, okay, in making steel rail cheaper and supplying the market. The railroads were expanding westward, so Pittsburgh then got the rail market. We had to get something else that was focused on the East Coast, i.e. shipbuilding. When we went into the structural market, we had that literally for 20 years, and it built Manhattan.
What do you feel makes Bethlehem unique in terms of its people? I know you mentioned you're from Baltimore, so what differentiates the people here in Bethlehem from, let's say, the people in Baltimore?
Good question. I grew up in Baltimore, and it was either the most southern northern city or the most northern southern city. It was definitely on the line. It was a segregated city when I grew up, and that influenced the steel mill, certainly, because I started there in 1956 in Sparrows Point plant. It was a segregated plant, and the allotment of jobs followed segregation. There's no doubt about it. But the African American population there fought it tooth and nail, and eventually they won, thank goodness. Here in Bethlehem, there never was much of an African American population in the plant, but there were 40-some defined ethnic groups in the plant. The major ones were Hungarians, Slovaks, Poles, Russians, and Pennsylvania Dutch.
And how about the Moravian culture here? When did that kind of come into play, and how did that shift things?
Okay, the Moravians founded Bethlehem in 1742. I hope I'm getting my dates right. And the steel company didn't show up here, actually as Bethlehem Iron, in 1860, but it was in South Bethlehem. Regular Bethlehem on the north side of the river was the Moravian community. So the Moravian influence, I'm sure it was here in South Bethlehem, but the steel company, and before that the iron company, imported Eastern European labor. So South Bethlehem grew up as a bunch of East European ethnic enclaves.
And one last thing, just to kind of bring it back, we always like to ask people, where's the best place to eat here in Bethlehem?
The best place to eat here in Bethlehem.
We hit you with the serious questions first, and then we try and lighten it up.
I really can't answer that because I lived in Center Valley, just south of Bethlehem, over the mountain, only 28 miles, 20 minutes from the plant gate. But when I would come in for shift work, I would always stop at a submarine or a hoagie making place to get my lunch. And it was Jay's Subs, and then Subway, and before that it were some local things. So I subsisted in this plant for 33 years on lunches made on various submarine making sandwich shops around the south side here.
That's fantastic. Are there any good sub shops? I don't think I passed any big sub shops, or maybe I just didn't take note
Well,
of
there's
them.
Subway out there now.
Okay.
And I'm upset at them because they've discontinued roast beef.
So probably start pulling that out.
So I'm not going to plug them.
That's so good. How about any like delicatessens? Are there any good places to get deli meats?
Goosey Gander was
Goosey
one of the best
Gander.
places, yes.
Wow.
And Goosey Gander is up here on 4th Street.
Thank you guys so much for joining me. This was a blast to film. These guys are true salt of the earth, the nicest people you will ever meet. I got to go out to lunch with them. They let me take part in their daily adventures and really be a volunteer and just kind of be embraced by the culture here in Bethlehem. So as always, please subscribe to the channel, like, follow us on social media, and if you're in Bethlehem, make sure you check out the museum. Thanks so much. Keep it candid.